Welcome back to Frontier Garage, everyone. As I've said in my previous videos, this is the first truck I've ever had. So today, I wanted to talk about why I chose this Frontier as my first truck over other midsize trucks like the Tacoma. Now, for some context, some of the vehicles I've had in the past include a used Toyota Corolla, a Jeep Wrangler, and a Camaro. I think it's important to mention this because it helps put into perspective where I'm coming from and what bias that may bring with it. I mean, if I was a hardcore Nissan fanboy who's always had Nissans, then me buying a Frontier is different from, say, if I was a hardcore Toyota guy who's always had Toyotas and then switched over for the Frontier, which, by the way, I'm neither, right? So I don't really have any brand loyalty, and I think my thoughts come from a pretty neutral place. So anyway, I was at a point in my life where I needed something a bit more practical. The way I looked at it, I needed a family vehicle which could be my daily, yet also be something I could have fun with and take on adventures. And by adventures, I mean I have this goal of visiting all the national parks in the country. With that being said, given my past experience with the Jeep, which had a transmission failure at around 70,000 miles, I was also looking for something a bit more reliable and something I could keep for like 10 to 15 years and not have to worry about. Lastly, I also didn't want to overspend on features that I didn't really need. Given my past vehicles, it's clear that I don't really have any brand loyalty. I just don't get that. I'm more of a what's the best option for what I need kind of guy. But you really have to be honest with yourself and not get carried away with all the marketing because then you end up paying for things you don't really need. Anyway, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. When you think reliability, you think Toyota. That's just the image they've built, especially that 5th gen 4Runner or 3rd gen Tacoma. They are the gold standard when it comes to reliability. For me, they would have been perfect to drive around in as a daily, perfect to visit all the national parks in, and do some occasional off roading. However, because they're so famously known for being bulletproof and reliable, dealerships were marking them up well above MSRP. Now, this was back in 2023 towards the end of the year, right before the new 4th gen Tacoma came out. So they were still selling brand new 5th gen 4Runners and 3rd gen Tacomas. And I was looking for a good dealership which didn't do those ridiculous markups. And with the way the world is now, once I started looking into it, the internet decided I needed help. And pretty soon, all my social media platforms turned into car dealerships. I would get ads from every manufacturer on everything I went on. And that's where in stepped the new 3rd gen Frontier. When I first saw the ad for it, I didn't even know what truck it was. I just remember thinking, that's a nice looking truck. But as soon as I realized that it was a new Nissan Frontier, I went, never mind. Well, because Nissan has built up a bad reputation over the past few years, most notably due to their terrible CVT transmissions, which have a track record of failing. I was still intrigued with the new Frontier's looks though, and decided to do some digging because I was like, when did the Frontier start looking like this? That's when I learned that they did the redesign in 2022, and the engine and transmission were actually introduced 2 years prior in 2020 on the 2nd gen Frontier. This was the good old tried and tested, naturally aspirated 3.8-liter V6 paired with the 9-speed automatic transmission. After doing some more research, I discovered that this transmission was vastly different from the CVT transmissions, which mainly caused Nissan's bad reputation. In fact, Nissan's trucks, which are the Frontier and Titan, never had CVT transmissions. Frontiers have actually been very reliable trucks. I mean, the 2nd gen Frontier has basically been the same truck since 2005 all the way until 2020. You can find high mileage Frontiers still running on factory engines and transmissions with no issues. What that meant was there was real world data proving the Frontier's reliability, and even for the redesign, they still kept a simple, big displacement, old school engine with no turbos. It's a proven, reliable engine that's easy to work on, and with 310 horsepower, has plenty of power for my needs. So I figured this is basically a case of Nissan has bad reputation and isn't doing well as a company, but the Frontier is one product they make that is still really great. This kind of makes sense as to why Frontiers are just not as popular as Tacomas. I mean, Nissan as a brand has been on the decline, and
They just never marketed these Frontiers in the right way. The Frontier is like an underdog that just flies under the radar and gets overlooked. This is eye-opening for me and really brought the Frontier into the picture.
Now, given my lifestyle and what I wanted out of my new vehicle, I thought a truck bed would be a better option to have. So that kind of eliminated the Forerunner, and I was down to the Tacoma or the Frontier. Now, I've already touched on Toyota's great reputation for reliability. I mean, they're the first thing I thought of, right? But I wanted to stay as objective as possible and not get carried away with all the brand image and marketing and all that. I mean, I simply wanted the best thing for my needs and not have to pay for other crap that didn't matter to me. So I tried to look at both the Tacoma and the Frontier based on three major criteria that mattered the most to me. And in no particular order, number one, functionality.
So I wanted something that would be simple to use, comfortable for everyday driving, and capable enough off-road, or at least a solid platform I could build on to make it even more capable later on. And both the Tacoma and Frontier had all this covered. They had just the right balance of tech without it getting in the way and being annoying. And after test driving both, I loved how they both drove. The Frontier shifting did seem a little smoother thanks to the 9-speed transmission compared to the 6-speed in the Tacoma, especially when I accelerated hard. It was really noticeable then. Plus, I knew I was going to eventually put 33-inch tires on whatever I ended up getting, which I thought the 9-speed transmission and slightly more powerful engine in the Frontier might handle better. The Frontier's cabin also seemed more quieter, which was nice for everyday use, so slight edge to the Frontier here. Number two, reliability. I needed something durable that will last a long time and had low maintenance, meaning I could easily work on it myself to keep costs down.
Obviously, I don't think anything needs to be said for that third generation Tacoma when it comes to reliability, but the Frontier seemed to be just as reliable from what I was seeing. I would say maybe like 90 to 95% just as reliable as the Tacoma. So again, both seem to satisfy this category really well, but I gave the slight edge to the Taco here.
And number three, cost. This was the big decider for me. As I mentioned earlier, Nissan was suffering as a company and still is, but as a consumer, this could be great for us because this means we get better deals. Nissan was trying to attract customers by giving discounts, whereas because Toyota was doing well and Tacomas were flying out the dealerships, they were actually raising prices. So if I had both trucks similarly spec'd at, say, the same price, what I was seeing was the Tacoma would have a $2,000 to $3,000 markup, whereas the Frontier would have a $4,000 to $5,000 discount.
So imagine if both trucks had an MSRP of 45,000, the Tacoma would typically end up being at around 48,000, whereas the Frontier would end up being around 40,000. Now, that's a difference of $8,000. Plus, I was looking to finance a new vehicle for 3 to 4 years, and Toyota wasn't doing any special financing on the Tacomas, whereas Nissan had 2.5% financing specials on the Frontier at the time.
So by the time the vehicle gets paid off, that's even more money I would save. So in terms of value, the Frontier was just a clear winner. And given how close everything else was between the two trucks, in my opinion, the fact that there was this big of a difference in cost just really pushed me towards the Frontier. There were also some other smaller things which are more subjective, but I'd still like to mention. First, I like the looks of the Frontier better than the old Tacoma. The new 4th gen Tacoma is better, but I still prefer the Frontier over that. Love the way that new Tacoma looks though, but that's even more expensive and it loses out in the reliability as well with a brand new platform which is already reporting some issues. Plus, the 4-cylinder turbo engine, not happy with that either. But in terms of looks, the new Taco is pretty sick.
Another thing is that you don't really see a lot of these Frontiers on the road. So I just wanted something a little different and not just go with whatever everyone else does. And I mean, no hate on the Tacoma guys. Hey, if money wasn't an issue, maybe I'd have both.
The only issue I had with the Frontier was just how low it sat from factory and the lack of ground clearance for off-roading. But since I was going to put a lift and 33s on it anyway, the only real negative I had with it wasn't going to be an issue.
It seems to be very reliable given the powertrain it has and capable enough for my level of off-roading. Plus, this is the Pro 4X trim, which was fully loaded with all the features that I could possibly need. And to top it off, it even came in this beautiful green color, which I really loved and was really wanting to have. So yeah, that's how I ended up with this Frontier. It has everything I need and no nonsense, which I don't, which would have just increased the price. I mean, it's a simple, old-fashioned, good-looking truck.
If you like this video and want to see my crazy journey with this truck and everything I do with it along the way, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, it goes a long way. I also want to mention I've started an Instagram page for the truck, which is linked on my channel. So make sure to follow me on there if you want to see even more cool content for the truck. And as always, thank you guys for watching and see you next time.